Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. We can't help you without your PIN. The manager's words cut through the bank's marble lobby. The elderly veteran's hands trembled slightly as he placed his military ID on the counter. "I served this country for 20 years, ma'am. Surely there's something you can do." The line behind him grew restless, customers checking watches and sighing loudly, all except one. The bank's elegant interior seemed to shrink around them. High ceilings with ornate moldings, polished floors reflecting fluorescent lights, tellers behind glass partitions watching the scene unfold. The veteran stood straight despite his years, his weathered face a map of dignity now creased with embarrassment. The manager's expression remained professionally blank, corporate policy her shield against his quiet desperation. "Sir, I understand your situation, but rules are rules," she repeated louder this time, ensuring the growing audience caught every word. The veteran's shoulders slumped almost imperceptibly as he gathered his worn wallet and ID. That's when a familiar voice broke through the uncomfortable silence. "Excuse me," said the man stepping forward from the queue, sunglasses now removed, revealing a face millions would recognize instantly. Robert Downey Jr. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. Heads turned in unison as Downey stepped forward, dressed casually in jeans and a black blazer that couldn't quite disguise his star power. The veteran didn't recognize him at first, his attention still fixed on his predicament, but the manager's eyes widened with recognition. A murmur rippled through the bank lobby as smartphones appeared discreetly, their cameras ready. The atmosphere transformed instantly from mundane weekday banking to something electric. "This gentleman," Downey gestured toward the veteran, "just told you he served for 20 years. 20 years. His voice remained conversational but carried an unmistakable edge. He approached the counter, standing beside the older man who now looked confused by this unexpected intervention. The veteran's military ID still lay on the counter between them, a photo of a younger man in uniform, dates of service visible, a lifetime of sacrifice condensed to a plastic rectangle that was, apparently, insufficient identification today. "Sir, it's company policy," the manager stammered, her professional demeanor faltering as she glanced nervously at the growing crowd of onlookers. "Without the correct PIN verification, we can't access the account. I don't make the rules." Her fingers nervously straightened papers that didn't need straightening, rearranging pens that were already aligned, corporate training failing to prepare her for this particular scenario. A Hollywood star advocating for a veteran in her lobby. Downey smiled, not the dazzling Hollywood smile from red carpets, but something more measured, almost dangerous in its restraint. "Policy," he repeated, tasting the word like something bitter. "Let me ask you something. What's your name?" The manager hesitated before answering. "Sarah Williams." Behind them, the bank had fallen completely silent. Even those pretending not to watch were now fully invested in the unfolding drama, transactions forgotten, appointments suddenly less urgent. "Well, Sarah Williams," Downey continued, leaning slightly on the counter, "I'm curious about something. Does your policy mention what to do when a man who protected your freedom for 2 decades needs help?" The veteran shifted uncomfortably, clearly unaccustomed to being the center of attention. His weathered hands that had once handled weapons, saluted flags, and carried wounded comrades, now fidgeted with his wallet, a gesture of vulnerability that made the contrast even more stark. "Sir, Mr. Downey," Sarah corrected herself, lowering her voice as if that might somehow make the dozens of watching eyes disappear. I completely respect his service. Truly. But there are security protocols. I could lose my job. The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed harsher, highlighting the cold marble, the security cameras, the corporate logos, a system designed to process transactions, not honor sacrifice. The veteran placed a gentle hand on Downey's sleeve, a silent request not to make trouble on his behalf, but the actor gently shook his head. This wasn't about causing trouble. This was about something far more fundamental. "I understand security protocols," Downey replied, his voice taking on the quiet intensity that had captivated movie audiences for decades. "But I also understand that sometimes systems fail the very people they're supposed to serve." He turned toward the veteran, his expression softening. "Sir, would you mind telling us your name and when you served?" The older man straightened slightly, military bearing returning automatically when addressed directly. "James Miller, United States Army, 1968 to 1988. Vietnam and after. His voice carried across the lobby, steady and clear despite his age. The words hung in the air, decades of history distilled into a simple statement. A few of the older customers nodded unconsciously in recognition or respect. One man removed his baseball cap. The phones recording the scene captured not just celebrities and conflict, but something unexpected. A moment of genuine reverence cutting through the artificial environment. Downey nodded, then turned back to Sarah, whose professional composure was visibly cracking under the weight of the moment. "So, Sarah Williams," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "today you have a choice to make. Your bank's policy versus Doing Right by James Miller, who spent 20 years making sure places like this could exist safely." The manager glanced desperately toward her supervisor's office, but the door remained closed. There would be no rescue, no higher authority to deflect this decision. The lobby remained frozen in anticipation, the next moments balanced on a knife edge between cold procedure and basic human dignity. What happened next would not stay within these marble walls. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. Sarah's eyes darted between Downey, Mr. Miller, and the growing crowd of spectators. Her fingers tapped nervously on her keyboard, corporate training battling with the unmistakable pressure of the moment. "I could try contacting our security department," she offered weakly, "but they'll ask for additional verification Mr. Miller doesn't have." The veteran's military ID still lay on the counter between them, a silent testament to a life of service now deemed insufficient by digital protocols and security algorithms. "Perhaps," Downey suggested, his tone conversational yet carrying across the hushed lobby, "there's a manager who might have some discretion in these matters." He maintained eye contact with Sarah, neither accusatory nor pleading, but with the steady gaze of someone used to navigating complex power dynamics. Around them, the audience had grown. Bank employees peered from behind counters, abandoning pretenses of work. Security guards stood alert but uncertain, the situation falling outside their usual parameters. A woman in line stepped forward, middle-aged, professionally dressed. "I've banked here for 15 years, she announced, addressing Sarah directly. "And I'd like to know why a military ID isn't enough." Others murmured in agreement. The atmosphere shifted palpably as individual spectators became a collective force. Mr. Miller's personal struggle was transforming into something larger, a test case for values everyone claimed to honor but rarely had to demonstrate. The veteran himself looked increasingly uncomfortable with the attention, his weathered face flushed with a complex mix of emotions, appreciation for the support, embarrassment at the trouble, and frustration at needing help for what should have been a simple transaction. It's not that his military ID isn't valid identification, Sarah explained, her corporate voice returning as she addressed the growing criticism. It's that without the PIN, we can't verify account ownership according to our security protocols. She emphasized the last words, clinging to procedure like a life raft in increasingly turbulent waters. These measures protect all our customers, including Mr. Miller. Behind her, a door opened, and a man in an expensive suit emerged, clearly alerted to the commotion. The branch manager had arrived. What seems to be the issue here? The branch manager approached with practiced confidence, his expression neutral but eyes quickly assessing the situation. The crowd, the phones recording, and most significantly, Robert Downey Jr. standing at his counter. Recognition flickered across his face, but professional training kept his reaction minimal. "I'm David Harrington, the branch manager. How can I help resolve this matter?" His carefully modulated voice suggested both authority and accommodation, a corporate diplomat deployed to defuse a potential PR crisis. "Mr. Harrington," Downey responded smoothly, extending his hand with the ease of someone who navigates public encounters daily. "We're trying to help Mr. Miller here. Access his account without a PIN he can't remember." The handshake was brief, but the eye contact lingered, two men silently measuring each other. The veteran stood straighter, military bearing returning in the presence of this new authority figure. Around them, phones continued recording, capturing every nuance of the interaction for audiences far beyond the bank's walls. "I understand the concern," Harrington replied, turning to Mr. Miller with a practiced smile. "Sir, there are alternative verification procedures for these situations. Perhaps we could step into my office and discuss them?" The invitation seemed reasonable, even accommodating. But Downey didn't move, his presence a silent barrier between the manager's attempt to relocate the conversation and the veteran who now looked uncertain. The crowd watched the subtle power play with collective interest. Would the situation be resolved, or merely moved behind closed doors where cameras couldn't follow? "Actually," Downey said, his voice carrying clearly despite its conversational tone, "I think everyone here is interested in seeing how your bank handles this." He gestured toward the onlookers, acknowledging their presence as legitimate stakeholders rather than inconvenient witnesses. Mr. Miller served his country publicly. Seems fitting that he be served in return the same way. The statement hung in the air, a challenge wrapped in reasonable terms. Harrington's professional smile tightened almost imperceptibly as he realized the usual playbook for customer service issues wouldn't work here. The temperature in the room seemed to rise as everyone waited for his response. Harrington's professional veneer cracked slightly as he glanced at the phones documenting every word, every expression. "Our protocols exist to protect our customers," he began, echoing Sarah's earlier defense but with more assertiveness. "I'm sure Mr. Miller himself appreciates that his account has these safeguards." He turned to the veteran with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We simply need to verify identity through approved channels. Perhaps a family member who might know the PIN." The suggestion carried subtle implications about the veteran's competence that didn't go unnoticed by the crowd. "My wife passed last year," Mr. Miller responded quietly, dignity intact, despite the increasingly public nature of his private difficulties. "She handled most of our banking." The simple statement transformed the atmospheric tension into something heavier, more profound. This wasn't just about forgotten numbers or bank policies. It was about a widower trying to navigate a world designed for the digitally fluent, for those with support systems, for those whose value wasn't reduced to whether they could remember a 4-digit code. A young man in jeans and a hoodie stepped forward from the line. "I work in cybersecurity," he offered. "There are multiple ways to verify identity beyond PINs. Social security number, address history, Security questions. He looked directly at Harrington. Banks have procedures for exactly this situation. Others nodded in agreement, the collective mood shifting from spectators to participants. What had begun as entertainment, celebrities confronting authority, was evolving into something more meaningful, a community recognizing injustice in its midst. Downey watched this transformation with quiet satisfaction before turning back to Harrington. It seems your customers understand banking better than you might have given them credit for. The comment landed precisely, neither aggressive enough to dismiss nor gentle enough to ignore. Harrington's jaw tightened, trapped between corporate policy and mounting public pressure. The security guard shifted uncomfortably, uncertain where his duties lay in this increasingly complex situation. Sarah, the initial manager, stood frozen behind her terminal, watching her superior navigate the crisis she had inadvertently created. Mr. Miller, sensing the escalating tension centered around him, placed his weathered hand on the counter. "Perhaps I should come back another day," he suggested quietly, the words of a man accustomed to navigating around systems rather than challenging them. But his attempt at diplomatic retreat came too late. What was happening now had transcended his individual problem, becoming instead a public referendum on respect, dignity, and the treatment of veterans in a society that claimed to honor them, but often failed to demonstrate that honor in meaningful ways. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk. "You're not coming back another day, Mr. Miller," Downey said firmly, placing a gentle hand on the veteran's shoulder. "You're getting helped today." He turned to face Harrington directly, his casual demeanor giving way to something harder, more focused. The intensity that had defined his most powerful roles now directed at the increasingly uncomfortable bank manager. "Let me ask you something, Mr. Harrington. Does your bank have advertisements featuring people in uniform? Maybe a special veterans banking program? Something about serving those who served?" The question hung in the air, precise and damning. Several customers nodded, one pointing to a poster visible in the lobby showing a smiling soldier with the bank's logo and the tagline, "Proud to serve our heroes." Harrington's expression tightened further, corporate rhetoric colliding visibly with present reality. The gap between marketing promises and actual service stretched wide enough for everyone to see through, illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lights and documented by dozens of recording phones. "We do value our veteran customers," Harrington began, professional training struggling to find the right script for this unprecedented situation. "That's precisely why we maintain such high security standards for their accounts." His response sounded hollow even to his own ears, the words disconnecting from their meaning as they left his mouth. A murmur of dissatisfaction rippled through the crowd. Behind him, other bank employees had stopped pretending to work, the daily business of the institution now completely suspended in favor of this unfolding drama. "I don't think Mr. Miller feels particularly valued right now," Downey responded, his voice quieter but somehow more forceful for it. "And I don't think anyone here is buying what you're selling." He gestured around the lobby where strangers had become a unified audience, their collective judgment palpable in the charged air. "You know what I think. I think you're hoping we'll get tired and leave, that the cameras will stop rolling, that this will blow over." His eyes never left Harrington's face as he delivered each sentence with the timing of an actor who understood the power of pauses, of rhythm, of building to a point. Mr. Miller stood straighter, something in Downey's words rekindling a spark of the military bearing evident in his ID photo. His embarrassment was giving way to the recognition that this wasn't charity or celebrity intervention for its own sake. This was about principle, about systems that needed challenging, about respect that had been earned but not delivered. Around them, the audience had grown completely still, collective breath held in anticipation of what would come next. "What exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Downey?" Harrington asked, his tone sharpening with the edge of someone who felt his professional authority slipping away in public. "That we ignore security protocols entirely? That's not reasonable, even for—" He caught himself before completing the thought, but everyone heard the unspoken implication. Even for someone famous. The tension crackled visibly now, personalities and principles colliding beneath the corporate veneer of civility. "What I'm suggesting," Downey replied, each word measured and clear, "is that you find a solution instead of hiding behind policy." He turned to address the entire lobby now, his natural charisma transforming the space into something resembling a town hall. "You know, I've played all kinds of characters in my career. Billionaires, detectives, even superheroes. But the thing about heroes," he glanced meaningfully at Mr. Miller, "real heroes, is that they find a way. They don't tell you why something can't be done. They figure out how it can be done." The speech landed perfectly, rippling through the audience who responded with nods and murmurs of agreement. Several people applauded briefly. Mr. Miller looked down, uncomfortable with being cast as the hero in this narrative, but the straightening of his shoulders suggested the words had reached something deep within him. Decades of service acknowledged in a way that transcended empty thanks for your service platitudes. "Mr. Harrington," a new voice called out. An elderly woman stepped forward from where she had been sitting in the waiting area. "I've banked here for 32 years. I knew your predecessor and his predecessor, too." Her voice quavered slightly with age, but carried the unmistakable authority of long experience. "There was a time when this bank knew its customers by name, not by numbers, when a handshake meant something." Her words cut through the modern banking environment with its glass and marble and digital systems, evoking something older, something lost. Harrington seemed to deflate slightly, trapped between impossible options: corporate policy versus mounting public pressure, modern security versus traditional values, procedure versus the human element standing before him in the form of a veteran who had fought for freedoms now being denied him by digits and algorithms. The silence stretched as phones continued recording, capturing his impossible position for posterity and viral distribution. Whatever he decided next would define not just this moment, but potentially his career and certainly his bank's public image. The branch manager's expression shifted, something giving way behind the corporate facade. He looked directly at Mr. Miller, seeing for perhaps the first time not a procedural problem, but a man. A veteran, a widower, someone who had given decades of his life in service while Harrington had been in elementary school. "Mr. Miller," he said finally, his voice different now, "I believe we can verify your identity through alternative means." He turned to Sarah. "Pull up the manual verification protocol, the one we use for emergency situations." Sarah's fingers moved across her keyboard, relief visible on her face at having a constructive direction. The crowd remained silent, watching this transformation with collective anticipation. Downey stepped back slightly, giving space for the resolution to unfold naturally, understanding instinctively that what mattered now was the dignity of the moment, not his celebrity presence within it. "Mr. Miller, if you could provide your social security number and answer a few questions about your account history, we should be able to help you today." Harrington's tone had transformed completely, from defensive corporate representative to someone genuinely trying to help. The change was subtle, but unmistakable, the humanity beneath the title emerging in real time before dozens of witnesses. The room's atmosphere shifted with it, tension giving way to something approaching respect. The veteran provided the requested information quietly, his dignity intact. Around them, people began to relax, sensing the shift toward resolution. Some continued recording, understanding they were witnessing something worthy of documentation. Not just celebrity intervention, but a moment of genuine social change, a small battlefield in the larger war between systems and the humans they were designed to serve, between procedure and principle. "Your account is verified, Mr. Miller," Sarah announced after a few moments, genuine relief in her voice. "We can process your withdrawal now." She looked up at him with a smile that contained an unspoken apology. "And we can also help you set up a new PIN that might be easier to remember if you'd like." The offer represented more than just technical assistance. It was acknowledgement that the system could adapt to human needs rather than demanding humans adapt to it. Mr. Miller nodded, the tension finally leaving his weathered face. "I'd appreciate that," he said simply. Around them, the audience broke into spontaneous applause, not the manufactured excitement of celebrity sightings, but something more genuine. The shared recognition of a wrong righted, of human dignity, affirmed in a small but significant way. Downey joined the applause, directing attention toward Mr. Miller and the bank staff who had found their way to the right decision, however circuitously. "It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it." As Mr. Miller completed his transaction, the bank gradually returned to its normal rhythm. Customers who had witnessed the entire event returned to their places in line, though conversations buzzed with animated retellings of what they'd just seen. Several people approached the veteran to shake his hand or offer a quiet word of thanks for his service, genuine now, not the perfunctory recognition often offered to those in uniform. He accepted these gestures with the modest grace of someone unaccustomed to attention but appreciative of sincere respect. Downey stood to the side, deliberately shifting focus away from himself, understanding that his celebrity had served its purpose as a catalyst, but that the story wasn't ultimately about him. He watched as Harrington personally escorted Mr. Miller to the door after his business was completed. The manager's body language transformed from corporate stiffness to genuine deference. Something had changed in that space, not just for these individuals, but in the collective understanding of everyone present. "Mr. Downey," Sarah approached him tentatively as he prepared to leave. "I just wanted to say—" She hesitated, searching for words adequate to the moment. "Thank you for speaking up." The simplicity of her statement carried more weight than elaborate explanations. He nodded, recognizing both her appreciation and the implicit acknowledgement that she had been caught in a system that sometimes required outside intervention to bend toward humanity. No villain in this story, just people constrained by structures larger than themselves. Outside the bank, several onlookers had gathered, drawn by social media alerts that something was happening. Phones captured Downey and Mr. Miller exiting together, the actor's hand respectfully on the older man's shoulder. The veteran seemed slightly overwhelmed by the attention, but stood straight, military bearing evident in his posture despite his years. The images being captured would spread far beyond this moment, beyond this street corner, carrying meanings both intended and unexpected to audiences neither man would ever meet. "Would you let me drive you home, sir?" Downey asked Mr. Miller as they navigated the small crowd that had formed. The question was asked quietly, with genuine respect rather than performative charity. The veteran considered for a moment before nodding his acceptance. As they walked toward the parking area, several people called out encouragement or thanks. To both men, the lines blurring between fictional heroism and real-world courage, between celebrity status and earned respect. By evening, videos of the encounter had spread across social media platforms. Comment sections filled with debates about banking regulations, veterans' rights, and the role of celebrity in social change. But beneath the expected internet noise ran a deeper current. Stories from other veterans about similar experiences, from bank employees about rigid systems they were required to enforce, from ordinary citizens about moments when they had remained silent instead of speaking up. The incident had touched something fundamental about modern American life: the gap between values claimed and values demonstrated. The bank's corporate headquarters released a statement by late afternoon. "We deeply value our relationship with all customers, especially those who have served our country. Today's incident at our downtown branch highlighted an opportunity to better serve veterans. We are immediately reviewing our verification procedures." The careful corporate language couldn't fully mask the scrambling happening behind the scenes as executives realized the potential public relations impact of videos showing their policies being applied inflexibly to a veteran while Robert Downey Jr. intervened. Local veterans groups seized the moment, scheduling a community banking workshop specifically addressing financial issues facing aging veterans. 3 banks immediately offered representatives to participate, eager to position themselves on the right side of a narrative that continued gaining traction. What had begun as one man's difficulty remembering a PIN was catalyzing concrete community action, the brief encounter crystallizing issues that had long simmered beneath the surface of public awareness. 3 days later, Mr. Miller received a call from the bank's regional director, personally apologizing and informing him that a new company-wide policy would be implemented specifically addressing verification options for veterans and seniors. The director didn't mention the viral videos or the celebrity involvement, but both hung unspoken in the conversation. The invisible catalysts that had turned one man's difficulty into institutional change. Miller accepted the apology with characteristic grace, more interested in the solution than in dwelling on the problem. Downey addressed the incident briefly when asked about it during a press junket the following week. "All I did was point out what everyone already knew was right," he said, deflecting praise. "The real heroes are people like Mr. Miller, who serve quietly for decades without expecting anything in return, and the everyday people in that bank who stood up alongside him once someone just pointed out the obvious." His response, like his initial intervention, redirected attention to the underlying issues rather than his celebrity role within the story. What remained after the social media cycle moved on to new controversies was something more enduring than viral fame. In that bank branch, new photos appeared on the wall, real veterans from the local community rather than stock images, each with a story of service attached. Sarah, the manager who had initially denied Mr. Miller, volunteered to lead the branch's new outreach program to veteran customers. Small changes, perhaps, but representing something profound in how systems respond to the humans they are designed to serve. For James Miller, life largely returned to normal. His quiet routines, his weekly visits to his wife's grave, his occasional stops at the local diner where other veterans gathered. But something had shifted in how he moved through the world, a renewed straightness to his shoulders, a reminder that his service still mattered, that he himself still mattered. The next time he entered the bank, 3 tellers greeted him by name. Sometimes respect comes in grand gestures before cameras, but more often it lives in these smaller moments, in being seen, in being known, in systems that bend toward humanity rather than away from it. That was the lesson that spread far beyond a marble bank lobby on an ordinary day, made extraordinary by the collision of celebrity, service, and the simple power of doing what's right. Wow, what a story! If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.